Hello everyone, it's time to thrill you, and I'm here with a thriller. So, this story is written by Jack London, the master of mystery. There was complaint in the village. The women chattered together with shrill, high pitched voices. The men were glum and doubtful of aspect, and the very dogs wandered dubiously about, alarmed in vague ways by the unrest of the camp and ready to take to the woods on the first outbreak of trouble. The air was filled with suspicion. No man was sure of his neighbor, and each was conscious that he stood in like unsureness with his fellows. Even the children were oppressed and solemn, and little Diya, the cause of it all, had been soundly thrashed, first by Hunia, his mother, and then by his father Bon, and was now whimpering and looking pessimistically out upon the world from the shelter of the big overturned canoe on the beach. And to make matter worse, Skandu, the shaman, was in disgrace and his known magic could not be called upon to seek out the evildoer. Forsooth, a month gone, he had promised a fair south wind so that the tribe might journey to the Poltach at Tonkin, where Takujim was giving away the savings of 20 years. And when the day came, lo, a grievous north wind blew, and of the first three canoes to venture forth, one was swamped in the big seas, and two were pounded to pieces on the rocks, and a child was drowned. He had pulled the string of the wrong bag, he explained, a mistake. But the people refused to listen. The offerings of meat and fish and fur ceased to come to his door, and the sulked within, so they thought, fasting in bitter penance. In reality, eating generously from his well stored cache and meditating upon the fickleness of the mob. The blankets of Hunia were missing. They were good blankets, of most marvelous thickness and warmth, and her pride in them was greatened in that they had been come by so cheaply. Taikwan of the next village but one was a fool to have so easily parted with them. But then she did not know they were the blankets of the murdered Englishman, because of whose take-off the United States cutter-nosed along the coast for a time, while its launches puffed and snorted among the secret inlets, not knowing that Taikwan had disposed of them in haste so that his own people might not have to render account to the government. Hunia's pride was unshaken, and because the woman envied her, her pride was without end and boundless, till it filled the village and spilled over along the Alaskan shore from Dutch Harbor to St. Mary's. Her team had become justly celebrated, and her name known on the lips of men wherever men fished and feasted. What of the blankets and their marvelous thickness and warmth? It was a most mysterious happening, the manner of their going. I but stretched them up in the sun by the side wall of the house, Hunia disclaimed for the thousandth time to her thinklet sisters. I but stretched them up and turned my back, for Diya, Dow chief and eater of raw flour that he is, with head into the big iron pot, overturned and mucked there, his legs waving like the branches of a forest tree in the wind, and I did but drag him out and twice knack his head against the door for deeper understanding, and behold, the blankets were not. The blankets were not, the woman repeated in awed whispers. A great loss, one added. Never were there such blankets. And a third, we be sorry, Hunia, for thy loss. Yet each woman was glad in her heart that the odious dissension breeding blankets were gone. I but stretched them up in the sun. Hunia began again. Yeah, Bon spoke up, worried. But there were no gossips in the village from other places. Wherefore, it be plain that some of our own tribespeople have laid unlawful hand upon the blankets. How can that be, O Bon? The woman chorused indignantly. Who should there be? Then there has been witchcraft, Bon continued stolidly enough, though he stole a sly glance at their faces. Witchcraft, and at the dread word, their voices hushed and they looked fearfully at each other. Aye, Hunia affirmed, the latent malignancy of her nature flashing into a moment's exultation. And word has been sent to Clocknoton and strong paddles. Truly shall he be here with the afternoon tide. The little groups broke up, and fear descended upon the village. Of all misfortune, witchcraft was the most appalling. With the intangible and unseen things only the shamans could cope, and neither man, woman, nor child could know until the moment of ordeal whether devils possessed their souls or not. And of all shamans, Clocknoton, who dwelt in the next village, was the most terrible. None found more evil spirits than he, none visited his victims with more frightful tortures. Even had he found once a devil residing within the body of a 3 months babe, a most obstinate devil, which could only be driven out when the babe had lain for a week on thorns and briars. The body was thrown into the sea after that, but the waves tossed it back again and again as a curse upon the village, nor did it finally go away till two strong men were stalked out at low tide and drowned. And Hunia had sent for this Clocknoton. Better had it been if Skandu, their own shaman, were undisgraced, for he had ever a gentler way, and he had been known to drive forth 2 devils from a man who afterward begat 7 healthy children. But Clocknoton, they shuddered with dire foreboding at thought of him, and each one felt himself the centre of accusing eyes, and looked accusingly upon his fellows, each one and all save Syme, and Syme was a scoffer, whose evil end was destined with a certitude to his success could not shake. Ho ho, he laughed, devils and Clocknoton, than whom no greater devil can be found in Thinklet land. Thou fool, even now he cometh with witcheries and sorceries, so beware thy tongue, lest evil befall thee, and thy days be short in the land. So spoke Lala. Otherwise the cheater and Syme laughed scornfully. I am Syme, unused to fear, unafraid of the dark. I am a strong man, as my father before me, and my head is clear. Nor you nor I have seen with our eyes the unseen evil things. But Skandu hath, Lala made answer, and likewise Clocknoton, this we know. How dost thou know, son of a fool? Syme thundered, the choric blood darkening his thick bull neck. By the word of their mouths, even so. Syme snorted, a shaman is only a man. May not his word be crooked, even as thine and mine? Baba, and one more bah, and this for thy shamans and thy shamans, devils, and this and this. And Syme snapped his fingers to right and left. Dawn arrived on the afternoon tide. Syme's defiant laugh was unabated, nor did he forbear to make a joke when the shaman tripped on the sand in the landing. Dawn looked at him sourly, and without greeting stalked straight through their midst to the house of Skandu. Of the meeting with Skandu, none of the tribespeople might know, for they clustered reverently in the distance and spoke in whispers, while the masters of mystery were together. Greeting, O Skandu, Clocknoton rumbled, wavering perceptibly from doubt of his reception. He was a giant in stature, and towered massively above little Skandu, whose thin voice floated upward like the faint far rasping of a cricket. Greeting, Clocknoton, Skandu returned. The day is fair with thy coming. Yet it would seem, Clocknoton hesitated. Ya, the little shaman put in impatiently, that I have fallen on ill days, else would I not stand in gratitude to you, in that you do my work. It grieves me, friend Skandu. Nay, I am made glad, Clocknoton. But will I give thee half of that which be given me? Not so, good Clocknoton, murmured Skandu, with a deprecatory wave of the hand. It is I who am thy slave, and my days shall be filled with desire to befriend thee, as thou now befriendest me. That being so, it is then a bad business, these blankets of the woman Hunia. The big shaman blundered tentatively in his quest, and Skandu smiled a wan, grey smile, for he was used to reading men, and all men seemed very small to him. Ever hast thou dealt in strong medicine, he said. Doubtless the evildoer will be briefly known to thee. Aye, briefly known when I set eyes upon him. Again Clocknoton hesitated. Have there been gossips from the other places? He asked. Skandu shook his head. Behold, Is this not a most excellent mukluk? He held up the foot covering of sealskin and walrus hide, and his visitor examined it with interest. It did come to me by a close driven bargain. Clocknoton nodded attentively. I got it from the man Lala. He is a remarkable man, and often have I thought. So, Clocknoton ventured impatiently. Often have I thought, Skandu concluded, his voice falling as he came to a full pause. It is a fair day, and thy medicine be strong, Clocknoton. Clocknoton's face brightened. Thou art a great man, Skandu, a shaman of shamans. I go now. I shall remember thee always, and the man Lala, as you say, is remarkable. Skandu smiled, yet more wan and grey, closed the door on the heels of his departing visitor, and barred and double barred it. He was mending his canoe when Clocknoton came down the beach, and he broke off from his work only long enough to load his rifle ostentatiously and place it near him. The shaman noted the action and called out, "Let all the people come together on this spot. It is the word of Clocknoton, devil seeker and driver of devils." He had been minded to assemble them at Hunia's house, but it was necessary that all should be present, and he was doubtful of Syme's obedience and did not wish to trouble. Syme was a good man to let alone. His judgment ran and at a bad one for the health of any shaman. "Let the woman Hunia be brought," Clocknoton commanded, glaring ferociously about the circle, and sending chills up and down the spines of those who looked up. Hunia waddled forward, head bent and gaze averted. "Where be thy blankets?" "I but stretched them up in the sun, and behold, they were not," she whined. "So? It was because of Dija. So? Him have I beaten sore, and he shall yet be beaten. For that he brought trouble upon us who be poor people. The blankets," Clocknoton bellowed hoarsely, foreseeing her desire to lower the price to be paid. "The blankets, woman, thy wealth is known. I but stretch them up in the sun," she sniffled, "and we be poor people and have nothing." She stiffened suddenly with a hideous distortion of the face, and Hunia shrank back. But so swiftly did he spring forward with inturned eyeballs and loosened jaw that she stumbled and fell grovelling at his feet. He waved his arm about, wildly flagellating the air, his body writhing and twisting in torment. An epilepsy seemed to come upon him. A white froth flecked his lips, and his body was convulsed with shiverings and trembling. He broke into a wailing chant, swaying backward and forward in abandonment, while one by one the men succumbed to the excitement. Only Syme remained. He perched upon his canoe, looked on in mockery, yet the ancestors whose seed he bore pressed heavily upon him, and he swore his strongest oaths that his courage might be cheered. Clocknoton was horrible to behold. He had cast off his blanket and torn his clothes from him, so that he was quite naked, save for a girdle of eagle claws about his thighs. Shrieking and yelling, his long black hair flying like a blot of night, he leaped frantically about the circle. A certain rude rhythm characterized his frenzy, and when all were under his sway, swinging their bodies in accord with his, and venting their cries in unison, he sat bolt upright, with arm outstretched and long, talon-like fingers extended. A low moaning as of the dead greeted this, and the people cowered with shaking knees as the dread finger passed them slowly by. For death went with it, and life remained with those who watched it go, and being rejected, they watched with eager intentness. Finally, with a tremendous cry, the fateful finger rested upon Lala. He shook like an aspen, seeing himself already dead, his household goods divided, and his widow married to his brother. He strove to speak, to deny, but his tongue clove to his mouth, and his throat was sanded with an intolerable thirst. Clocknoton seemed half to swoon away, now that his work was done, but he waited with closed eyes, listening to the great blood cry to go up, the great blood cry, familiar to his ear from 1,000 conjurations. People flung themselves like wolves upon the trembling victim, but there was only silence, then a low tittering from nowhere in particular, which spread and spread until a vast laughter welled up to the sky. Wherefore, he cried, Nana. The people laughed. Thy medicine be ill, O Clocknoton. It be known to all, Lala stuttered. For 8 weary months have I been gone afar with the Sivash sealers, and but this day am I come back to find the blankets of Hunia gone ere I came. It be true, they cried with one accord, the blankets of Hunia were gone ere he came, and thou shalt be paid nothing for thy medicine, which is of no avail, announced Hunia, on her feet once more and smarting from a sense of ridiculousness. But Clocknoton saw only the face of Skandu and its wan grey smile, heard only the faint far crickets rasping. I got it from the man Lala, and often have I thought, and it is a fair day and thy medicine be strong. He brushed up Hunia, and the circle instinctively gave way for him to pass. Syme flung a jeer from the top of the canoe. The woman snickered in his face, cries of derision rose in his wake, but he took no notice. Pressing onward to the house of Skandu, he hammered on the door, beat it with his fists, and howled vile imprecations. Yet there was no response, save that in the lulls Skandu's voice rose eerily in incantation. Clocknoton raged about like a madman, but when he attempted to break in the door with a huge stone, murmurs arose from the men and women, and he, Clocknoton, knew that he stood shorn of his strength and authority before an alien people. He saw a man stoop from a stone, and a second, and a bodily fear ran through him. Harm not Skandu, who is a master. A woman cried out. Better you return to your own village, a man advised menacingly. Clocknoton turned on his heel and went down among them to the beach, a bitter rage at his heart, and in his head a just apprehension for his defenceless back. But no stones were cast. The children swarmed mockingly about his feet, and the air was wild with laughter and derision, but that was all. Yet he did not breathe freely until his canoe was well out upon the water, when he rose up and laid a futile curse upon the village and its people, not forgetting to specify Skandu, who had made a mock of him. There was a clamour for Skandu, and the whole population crowded his door, entreating and imploring in confused babel, till he came forth and raised his hand. In that ye are my children, I pardon freely, he said, but never again. For the last time thy foolishness goes unpunished. That which ye wish shall be granted, and it be already known to me. This night, when the moon has gone behind the world to look upon the mighty dead, let all the people gather in the blackness before the house of Hunia. Then shall the evildoer stand forth and take his merited reward. I have spoken. It shall be death, Bon vociferated, for that it hath brought worry upon us and shame. So be it, Skandu replied, and shut his door. Now shall all be made clear and plain, and content rest upon us once again, Lala declaimed oracularly. Because of Skandu, the little man, Syme sneered. Because of the medicine of Skandu, the little man, Lala corrected. Children of foolishness, these thinklet people. Syme smote his thigh a resounding blow. It passeth understanding that grown women and strong men should get down in the dirt to dream things and wonder tales. I am a travelled man, Lala answered. I have journeyed to the deep seas and seen signs and wonders, and I know that these things be so. I am Lala, the cheater, so called, but the far journeyer right named. I am not so great a traveller, Syme began. Then hold thy tongue, Bon cut in, and they separated in anger. When the last silver moonlight had vanished beyond the world, Skandu came among the people, huddled about the house of Hunia. He walked with a quick, alert step, and those who saw him in the light of Hunia's slush lamp noticed that he came empty-handed, without rattles, masks, or shaman's paraphernalia, save for a great sleepy raven carried under one arm. Is there wood gathered for a fire? so that all may see when the work be done? He demanded. Yeah, Bon answered. There would be plenty. Let all listen, for my words be few. With me have I brought Jelks, the raven, diviner of mystery. Lamp shall cease to burn, and all remain in outer darkness. It is very simple. One by one shall ye go into the house, lay hand upon the pot for the space of one long intake of the breath, and withdraw again. Doubtless Jelks will make outcry when the hand of the evildoer is nigh him, or who knows, but otherwise he may manifest his wisdom. Are ye ready? We be ready, came the multi-voiced response. Then will I call the name aloud, each in his turn and hers, till all are called. Lala was first chosen, and he passed in at once. Every ear strained, and through the silence they could hear his footsteps creaking along the rickety floor. But that was all. Jelks made no outcry, gave no sign. Bon was next chosen, for it well might be that a man should steal his own blankets with intent to cast shame upon his neighbors. Hunia followed, and other women and children, but without result. Saim, Skandu called out. Saim, he repeated, but Saim did not stir. Art thou afraid of the dark? Lala, in his own integrity being proved, demanded fiercely. Saim chuckled. I laugh at it all, for it is a great foolishness. Yet will I go in, not in belief in wonders, but in token that I am unafraid. And he passed in boldly, and came out still mocking. Some day shalt thou die with great suddenness, Lala whispered, righteously indignant. I doubt not, the scoffer answered airily. Few men of us die in our beds. What with the shamans and the deep sea? When half the villagers had safely undergone the ordeal, the excitement, because of its repression, became painfully intense. When two-thirds had gone through, a young woman, close on her fist childbed, broke down, and in nervous shrieks and laughter gave form to her terror. Finally, the turn came for the last of all to go in, and nothing had yet happened. And Dija was the last of all. It must surely be he. Hunia let out a lament to the stars, while the rest drew back from the luckless lad. He was half dead from fright, and his legs gave under him, so that he staggered on the threshold and nearly fell. Skandu shoved him inside and closed the door. A long time went by, during which could be heard only the boy's weeping. Then very slowly came the creak of his steps to the far corner, a pause, and the creaking of his return. The door opened, and he came forth. Nothing had happened, and he was the last. Let the fire be lighted, Skandu commanded. Surely the thing has failed, Hunia whispered hoarsely. Yeah, Bon answered complacently. Skandu groweth old, and we stand in need of a new shaman. Saim threw his chest out arrogantly and started up to the little shaman. Ho ho! As I said, nothing has come of it. So it would seem, so it would seem, Skandu answered meekly, and it would seem strange to those unskilled in the affairs of mystery. As thou, Saim queried, mayhap even as I. Skandu spoke quite softly, his eyelids drooping, slowly drooping, down, down, till his eyes were all but hidden. So I am minded of another test. Let every man, woman and child, now and at once, hold their hands up above their heads. So unexpected was the order, and so imperatively was it given, that it was obeyed without question. Every hand was in the air. Let each look on the other's hands, and let all look, Skandu commanded, so that but a noise of laughter, which was more of wrath, drowned his voice. All eyes had come to rest upon Saim. Every hand but his was black with soot, and his was guiltless of the smudge of Hunia's spot. A stone hurtled through the air and struck him on the cheek. It is a lie, he yelled, a lie. I know not of Hunia's blankets. A second stone gashed his brow. A third whistled past his head. The great blood cry went up, and everywhere were people groping for missiles. Where hast thou hidden them? Skandu's shrill, sharp voice cut through the tumult like a knife. In the large skin bale in my house, the one slung by the ridgepole, came the answer. But it was a joke. Skandu nodded his head, and the air went thick with flying stones. Syme's wife was crying, but his little boy, with shrieks and laughter, was flinging stones with the rest. Hunia came waddling back with the precious blankets. Skandu stopped her. We be poor people and have little, she whimpered. So be not hard upon us, O Skandu. The people seized from the quivering stone pile they had builded and looked on. It was never my way, good Hunia, Skandu made answer, reaching for the blankets. In token that I am not hard, these only shall I take. Am I not wise, my children? Thou art indeed wise, O Skandu, they cried in one voice. And Skandu, the master of mystery, went away into the darkness, the blankets around him, and Jug snorkeling sleepily under his arm. So, it ends here. More interesting tales from across different genres will be coming in front of you. Keep supporting. Thank you.